Well, geeks, welcome to Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. How'd you like the intro video? That's the intro video that I've been working on since the show started with my friends. And so that was the world premiere of the rock song for the intro for the show. And I hope you guys really enjoyed it because we worked out really hard on it. So, I want to give a specific shout out to the other geeks who helped me record and write the song and do the video. So Jeff Smith on drums. He's been a good friend of mine for a long time. He lives near me, and he's actually in a couple real bands. And so that's really cool. Mark Davis, who I've known for a long time too. He did lead guitar because he's better at that than I am. I did the rhythm guitar and wrote the music, and then through Alan O'Neill, I got Nick to do bass, and I just got a video of him this morning playing the bass, so I'll add that for next week. So I hope you guys liked it. We worked really hard, and that's what I like to do for fun when I have some free time. So I'm glad you guys saw that. So thanks again for everybody who helped me work on that. And thanks again for C# Corner to allow me to do that. Because that's a little different than the most intro songs for the live shows here on C# Corner. So anyway, can you put the slides up? So I'm really happy to have Jeremy Likness on today he's a senior program manager for dotNetDave at Microsoft. So I'm really excited to chat with him for the first time. He's my first guest who I actually don't know. I haven't known for years and years, like the other guests I've had on so far. So I'm a bit nervous. So anyway, let's get to what we're doing today. Because I have something to show you that I worked with Microsoft on yesterday. So welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. Again, the show is for you. I really need your thoughts and suggestions and comments. I don't think I've received a single one yet, so please email me. I will take anything because I want to make this show as good as I can for you all watching it throughout the world today and on the recording. So please email me. So again, we got some giveaways again today. Please participate. I just found out that not everybody, we haven't given away all the prizes in the last 4 shows. So please participate. Get your fingers ready to type in the chat. So at the end of the show, we're going to give away a $50 Amazon gift card. Before Jeremy, I'm going to give away C# Corner swag. And then at the very end, of course, everybody gets a free copy of Code Rush from DevExpress, the only code refactoring tool I've used in Visual Studio. So let's get to the C# Corner gifts. What does the acronym CLI mean? I've tried to make this really easy for you guys so you can win. So first person who types into the chat, what does the acronym CLI means, wins the C# Corner gift bag, a backpack and t-shirts and whatever else they have. So I'll wait just a few seconds and see if anybody comes up with it. Otherwise, Simon will pick the winner if you're lagging there a little bit or have Wi-Fi. Okay, so today I want to talk really quick about fixing an issue with Visual Studio 2019. And the reason I want to show you this is because I ran into this last week, early this week, and I couldn't figure out a solution to it. And so I actually contacted a PM on the Visual Studio team who actually will be on the show next month. And she couldn't figure it out through my tweets and emails. And so I actually had a 2-hour call with her yesterday, along with a engineer at Microsoft, to figure out what's going on with Visual Studio with the latest update of Visual Studio 2019. So I kind of want to share that with you because you will probably run into this until .NET 5 is released next month. So let's fix it. Or I want to show you the workaround, or a fix and a workaround, I guess you can call it. So I don't know if you guys know, but in Visual Studio 2019, not preview, 2019, there's a new preview feature in the options, and there's a new setting that says use previews of .NET Core SDK. And this allows you to use the preview features of, the next version of .NET Core, or in this case, .NET 5. And so if you turn that on, that will cause a problem. So I want to show you how to get around it. So if you don't want to cause this problem at all, don't turn that on. But if you do want to play around with some of the new features, you can turn it on, but it's going to cause a problem if you create new projects. So here's the problem. So if you create a brand new .NET project in Visual Studio 2019, because of this problem, and because the way they explained it to me yesterday is because the new, what do they call it? The project template, the new project template wizard for .NET 5 isn't in Visual Studio 2019. And so in .NET 5, part of the process of creating a new project is to pick what version of .NET Core, .NET 5, or .NET Framework you want to use. But because that new project wizard isn't in 2019, it will cause this problem. So when you create a new console app, I even tried it yesterday with a unit test app, it still happened. What will happen is you get these errors and it won't build. And you see some errors there for dependencies, and then you get this error down below about the .NET Framework version 5 problem. So it did actually take us 2 hours to figure this out yesterday. So like I said, if you don't want to cause this problem, don't turn on the preview features. But if you turn on the preview features, this is how you fix it. So if you have the preview features turned on, what .NET does, it puts in for the target framework .NET 5. And .NET 5 doesn't work with Visual Studio 2019. So this is the problem. So if you want to continue with the preview features on, you need to go into the project, the project file, and just set what version of the .NET framework you want, because you can't do it in the project properties for some reason. You have to do it in the project file itself. Okay? So I think that's it. So if you're running the preview feature, make sure you're aware of this if you try to create a new project. Okay? Something else I learned yesterday, and maybe this was obvious to you guys, but I didn't catch on to it. So Microsoft has different ways of doing versions now of .NET, and they call them long-term support and just normal support. And normal support doesn't last very long after the new version comes out, but the long-term support, I think they said, was 5 years or 3 or 5 years, something like that. But anyway, so how do you know which version is long-term and not long-term support? By the version number. If it's even, it's long-term support. If it's odd, it's not. So there you go. All right. With that, I want to bring on Jeremy Likness. Let me read his bio. Jeremy is a senior program manager at Microsoft on the .NET team. Jeremy works on the overall experience interacting with data from .NET with a focus on Entity Framework Core and .NET for Spark. Jeremy is an author and international speaker. He was diagnosed at a young age with Parkinson's disease. He was diagnosed in 2020 and advocates for awareness in research and cure. I like that. He spends most of his free time hiking in beautiful mountains in Pacific Northwest. That must be awesome. Probably not near, we don't have near as good hiking as you guys do. And Jeremy has a technical blog, and which you can see there, and lots of other things. So let's talk to Jeremy.
All right.
Hey, Jeremy.
That was an amazing introduction, by the way, at the beginning. I don't know how I guess can't get pumped up listening to that awesome guitar. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks. That's actually the way I start my conference talks too. So I have intro videos similar to that for my conference talks. So
that's great.
It's a way. I found out, I did it originally to pump up the audience, right? But then I found out it actually pumps me up.
Right. Exactly.
So we're kind of both on the same page when I hit the stage, right?
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I'm not musically talented, but I know what I like, so maybe I can throw together a theme song for future talks.
Well, maybe after this, I'll show you some of the videos from the C# Corner Conference, because when I go to, you probably don't know this, but when I go to the C# Corner Conference in India every year, they actually have me perform live guitar at the conference, right? And then this is the craziest thing. This is why I have to show you the video. But then at the very end, they have me smash the guitar into pieces and throw the pieces out into the audience, and the audience goes insane.
That's awesome. So the key is to have something to break and distribute.
Yeah.
Is what I got out of that. So you mentioned the hiking is probably better. What area are you in? Where do you live?
I live in Southern California in San Diego. So
okay.
Yeah.
So you have the perfect weather, though.
Yes, we do have the perfect weather. So we can hike all year, right?
Right.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Kathleen Dollard yesterday, and we were kind of talking about, one of the great things about, well, I wouldn't call this great, but at least, when we're dealing with COVID, if you want to eat out, you can always eat out here, because, you can eat outside all year here.
Right.
Where, up where you live, that's gone.
The window of opportunity is narrowing. Although in Washington State, the cold and the rain doesn't seem to deter too many people. It's raining, rain jacket.
Yeah.
It's cold, another layer. Go out in it.
So yeah, and thankfully our weather has finally got back to normal. So I'm not so worried about the fire danger now, because we've seemed to finally get into the fall. Because even earlier this week it was pretty freaking hot here. So
nice.
Yeah. So
I mean, not nice that it's hot. Nice that you're out of the heat.
Yeah. I'm glad, but mostly just because I was worried about the fires. So.
Sure.
California's been hit pretty hard with fires this year, and you guys too. So,
yeah, we've been getting a lot of smoke. It was insane for a few weeks there. I could see maybe 50 feet out of my window because the haze was so thick. Although I know it's worse closer to the sources. So. Yeah,
I saw some of the pictures from Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. It looked like a apocalyptic. One of those movies, where
sure
the whole world's going to crap, and so what's new and exciting in your world? You gave me a whole list of stuff we could talk about. Let me just read this off real quick, because I want people to one of the whole purposes of this interview is for you guys to ask Jeremy questions. So here's a list of topics he sent to me. We already talked about any framework, Blazor, Power Tools, Expressions and Link, .NET for Spark, GraphQL, his career, how he organizes his day, week. I would love to hear about that. Public speaking, of course, I like that. And your exercise regimen. And so if anybody has questions on any of those things or whatever you want, please shoot us your questions on the chat, and we'll get them answered for you. So what's new and exciting in your world, Jeremy?
Well, right now we're at that magic moment of transitioning from .NET 5 to the next release. So we've got our .NET Conf coming up next month. It's going to happen pretty quickly, and all of the .NET 5 bits go out. So I work with a few teams. I work with .NET for Apache Spark. We released a 1.0 release, and we'll be announcing that the release is out, but the announcements are forthcoming. And then Entity Framework Core, it has released its last release candidate. So the big thing we're doing right now as a program manager, a big part of what I do is what we call customer development. And that's really reaching out, understanding not what we think people want, right? It's what people really need. Yeah. And so we're trying to understand what those priorities are, so that as we plan for the next set of releases, we're prioritizing appropriately, and we deliver something that the community is looking for. So that's really the big set of activities I'm doing now, is all of that planning for the next set of releases. I'm also digging into GraphQL. There's no formal product there, but as a .NET Data PM, GraphQL comes up on the radar a lot. I'm very interested in understanding the experience that .NET developers have working with GraphQL. And then based on that, we'll see, what makes sense in the .NET ecosystem to support that better.
Cool. Yeah. I forgot to say this when I was introducing you, but so like I said at the beginning of the show that, Jeremy, I was a bit nervous about the show because you're the first person that I've interviewed that I don't actually know for years. And I was thinking, why were you one of the people that I chose to contact to be on, the first shows? And I think it was from your Twitter account and, what you tweet about. And I think I felt you and I think the same kind of ways of, whatever you tweet about. And then to kind of get ready for the show this morning, I went to your blog, and I'm really sorry I haven't checked out your blog because it looks awesome. And
thanks.
Yeah, and there's something you put in your blog about I forget which one it was, but you put something in that really hits home for me too, because this is kind of the way I think about what I do besides my full-time job. And that's, you said you empower developers to do their best, and that's exactly what I do. That's why I spend almost all my free time, except for my 8-hour job, helping other developers. Right. And so that's a big passion of mine. I've tried to turn it down, but I'm not very successful at it. So I keep pushing and trying to make things better for developers, and doing everything from writing and speaking and working with Microsoft since I've been an MVP for 14 years. And and so I'm really big into that. I wish I got paid for all that and not my job.
Yeah, that was interesting for me because I've had a variety of roles. I've been a developer my whole career, but I've done a developer on a team. I've done an architect role. I've been a practice lead, a director over a technology department, a lot of different options and roles. And I got to a point in my career where I said, I want to do something different. I've been just kind of running to the next opportunity. Why don't I stop, take a step back, and think about what it is I'm really passionate about, why I do the things I do. And when I took a look at it, I said, really, I do a lot of speaking, a lot of writing, not because I make money doing that. In fact, I made zero money speaking. I made some money writing, but it was really to share that passion for code. I started coding when I was really young. I was 7 years old when I wrote my first program, and it was like magic to me. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so defining that and making that statement that the goal is to empower developers to be their best helped me decide on what my next step in my career was going to be. And that step at the time was moving on to the Cloud Advocates team at Microsoft, because that is the core of what they do. They advocate for developers. So that was exciting, my first 3 years at Microsoft. And then I thought, you know what? I would like to be more impactful in driving things at a deeper level, not just influencing what's coming out of the box, but not just influencing things after they come out of the box, but actually influencing what's in the box. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking around internally, and it just happened to be the right timing and the right sequence of events to land this role, which was filling a gap on the Entity Framework core team, but also having that larger charter of looking at data across .NET. I can't think of any way as a .NET developer I can provide more impact than helping improve that experience of .NET data. So that's what I've been doing. That's what a lot of my GitHub side projects are about, is just making things easier, either by illustrating, teaching, or providing tools and utilities for that.
That's cool. And you're talking about there's no money in writing. I tell people this all the time. That is so true. It's not funny, for, like September, I sold, I think, 1 book on Amazon, this month I'm up to 4, so.
Well, if I could turn my camera around, you'd see a couple of my books holding my monitor up to a ergonomic height.
That's what's holding up one of my monitors is the last book that I worked with a publishing company with, because it's really thick, so it helped me bring up my monitor. I actually have 2 of my books right here propping up my monitor.
Well, I wrote the first book that I wrote, not as a co-author, but on my own, was a architecture guide to Silverlight for business applications. And when it went to print, it was, I think, a week or 2 weeks before the announcements came out, when everyone realized that Silverlight was probably going away. So it was a case of really bad timing. Then I pivoted to a book about the Windows runtime, and that made it out right before there was this pivot to Windows 10 and a new set of programming models. So I said, you know what, the process takes so long that I'm going to stop focusing on print. It's just such a long cycle, and the technology changes by the time you're done, and focus more on blog posts, videos, and things that can get out there more quickly and can be updated and be more real time.
Yeah, I switched the kind of books I write to a while ago, actually, because of that reason. I learned a long time ago that because of my books, like, for example, the last Visual Basic book I wrote, the second they announced .NET, that was it. Even though that's 2 years away, that was it. That everything, right. And so so that was like, what, 2000 or 99, and ever since that point, I decided, nope, I'm not doing books like that anymore. All the books, at least I publish on my own, is all wrapped around something that won't get thrown out the next version,
Right. There's some timeless concepts. There's things I learned 20 years ago about programming that are still valid today. And if you can write about those topics, then you've got something solid that doesn't go obsolete right away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I like that better. And I was just thinking that, because, firsthand, and so do I, the long lead time to get a print book done, with a publishing house. Right. So now that you guys are doing a new version every year, I don't know how they do it, because there's, it's too hard to get any book out if you guys are releasing every year.
There's obviously some people who are able to produce vast volumes of text much faster than I can. I recently reviewed a ASP.NET Core book, and this thing, hundreds and hundreds of pages. And I know it was an update for a new release, but the new content was just comprehensive. And I'm thinking, how on earth did the author find the time to write all this? I'm very impressed. And all of you print authors who are listening to this, good for you. Congratulations, because it's a tough thing to do. So
yeah, I'm too old to do that now. Maybe when I was younger, but not now. So we do have our first question. I'm going to let you take it. I know the answer, but I'm going to let you do it. What is there for a cloud platform in .NET 5?
Interesting question. So is the question, where can you deploy .NET 5 to? Is that how I should interpret that, I'm guessing? Because, I mean, .NET 5 is going to run anywhere, right, that supports .NET framework. Will have bits that are redistributable. So obviously at Microsoft, our cloud platform is Azure, but there's plenty of other cloud platforms out there, and I'm definitely not going to say go here, go there, go everywhere. There's so many factors that go into deciding where you're going to deploy. But if I'm understanding that question correctly, I would say all of the major cloud platforms are going to receive .NET 5.
Yeah, and the only caveat I want to make sure people realize is that, and Azure is a lot better than it used to be in the beginning, but I'm pretty sure that Azure will support .NET 5 the day it comes out. But, the other platforms like AWS and Google and stuff probably won't. if that's what they're asking. You know,
right.
because they always lag behind the latest version of .NET. And Azure did too in the beginning, but you know, I think they've caught up now. But the other platforms definitely probably won't support it. I can't say for sure, but yeah.
Well, and I mean, so internally for our images, there's a very rigorous set of security and testing and hardening of the images that are involved for support. So I know we go through that. And I also know that the other companies don't always get the bits early enough. They need to, like, if they get the bits when other people do, right, they need to go through their testing cycles. But I do think it's interesting. If you had asked me if I wanted to join Microsoft 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I probably would have said no desire.
Yeah.
Just because, and I'm not going to get into a lot of politics and things like that, but the company today, let's focus on that, has transformed so much. When I'm on the Entity Framework core team, I'm in meetings with people from what would be considered major competitors, and we're helping them build providers for Entity Framework core, solve problems. So it's really exciting to see the collaboration that goes on. Like, it's healthy competition, but it's not cutthroat. And we have some pretty incredible positive calls with people from competing cloud platforms and services. So
that's good. I'm glad. I don't know much about any other platforms except AWS, but you know, I'm glad that the other platforms are catching up to .NET and making it maybe not a first class citizen, but definitely, you know, allowing it to be, you know, run on their platforms too.
Yeah, I would say, and I know specifically Google and AWS have dedicated teams that their goal is to make .NET first class citizen on those platforms. So it's some great people working on those teams making it happen.
I think we've gotten the best question ever since I've started the show. And of course, I don't think you should say this out loud, but does Jeremy have an email or something? He's really cute and I want to chat with him later.
Well, yeah, I think that's the first comment like that I've received on a live show. So
I've never got a comment like that, so it's okay.
And you're the rock star.
I know.
You've got the guitar. I don't know.
I know,
what to do
you
with
would
the guitar.
think, right? You would think, but that works better when I'm playing live, you know?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for the compliment.
Yeah, that's a really nice compliment. That's my favorite question so far in the 5 episodes. So since still waiting for some more questions for Jeremy, you know, I thought about, and this is just for my own info too, because I'm, you know, behind on, you know, catching up with a lot of stuff, but can you guys kind of give, you know, like a quick overview of just what GraphQL is?
Yeah, sure. So GraphQL is think of it as an API or protocol for asking for data. That's it in a nutshell. So the idea is you have a server, and the server provides various services. And I'm by no means the expert. I'm starting to dive into this. But a big piece of that service is a schema. So you can go out and ask the server, kind of like with a WSDL for WCF SOAP programmers. You go out and get the WSDL and you can discover things about the API. GraphQL has a specific way of exposing these are the things you can ask for. For example, it might say, I have a concept of a user, and a user has a name, a user has an email, and a user leaves reviews for products. So you can get a collection of reviews. And oh, by the way, here's a review, and a review has a number that's 1 to 5, how many stars, and a comment. And it's associated with a product. So fundamentally, the server exposes that. And then on the client, the value proposition for GraphQL is, as a client, instead of having to build a custom API based on, you know, I want to do this, that, or the other, the client can be very specific in what the client asks for. So the client can say, I would like users using this query, but only return the username. So that is a specification the client can send down and say, I just want the name from the user. And the GraphQL server will then say, okay, I'm going to go and translate that to, my cache or my database or whatever means it's using to fetch data, because it doesn't have to be tied directly to a database, and it will return that. And some more advanced GraphQL servers can do things like stitching multiple sources together. So you may have a service that deals with users and has all the information about that. And you may have a completely different system that provides reviews, but that can be entirely transparent to the client. I can say, I want reviews for this user, make that in one request, and the server will go out to the reviews, grab those, go out to the user, grab that information, combine it, and send it back in one payload. So the way that you ask for information is very similar. It's not the same, but it's very similar to JSON syntax. So it's very comfortable and familiar to web developers. And then the whole piece that I'm looking at for the experience for .NET is, what does it take if I have a set of data for me to stand this up? Because I have to tell the GraphQL server, where's my data? I have to tell it what data can be exposed. We have to worry about security. There's so many concerns, and that's the server side. Then there's the client side. I'm building a Xamarin mobile app, or I'm building a Blazor app. How do I interact with the server? Am I putting together magic strings, right, to define this, or do I have a fluent API or interface? Can I use LINQ even? I mean, these are all questions I don't have answers for, but there's several libraries that are out there, and we're looking into those libraries, and I'm just understanding the experience for that. But that's the value prop for GraphQL, is this idea that building the client can be precise, specific, and it can talk to one gateway without having to go here for this data set, there for that data set. And it can be very optimized so that you're only getting the data you need. Instead of a record this big, you get the 3 fields that you show.
Well, that sounds, I mean, I'm already thinking about maybe, like we could use that on the next phase of the project at work, because, right now I have, our data store, unfortunately, is Salesforce, which is just a really big pain in the what to deal with. But we want to kind of add some data, but we don't want to add it to Salesforce necessarily. And we don't want to go into what other projects where I work did, and that does a middleware database, because then, that's a whole syncing problem of it in of itself. And so I'm guessing that GraphQL can, and you said this, it's one point for different sources of data. So you can, let's say you can have SQL Server and SharePoint combined together. Is that something?
That's like correct. Yeah. And your mileage may vary based on the graph. There's multiple projects that offer GraphQL. We do not have a native. There's no system.GraphQL at Microsoft. It's all community projects. And there's a project called, and it's a really fun name, Hot Chocolate is one that I've seen a lot about. There's GraphQL.net, which is considered it's been out there for a long time. I just learned about GraphQL Lite.net, I think it's called. So there's several different packages, but a capability that many of them have on the server that I've seen in common are being able to stitch together the different sources. Even if you have existing REST APIs, for example, and you just want to put a facade in front of those so that a client can just speak GraphQL, that's a possibility that you can configure.
Cool. I'm going to now check into it. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I haven't built too many pilot projects with that, but I do a lot with Blazor and have a lot of fun building reference Blazor projects. So the 2 big to-dos on my list of side projects to explore are a Blazor server client that uses GraphQL, so the WebAssembly client with GraphQL, and a ASP.NET Core server with GraphQL, and then gRPC is another exciting protocol that Microsoft has put a lot of support behind with the web gRPC protocol. Right. So I definitely want to learn more about that.
Yeah, that's on my list to learn too. So I'm not sure if I understand this question, but let's see if you do. How is EF Core going to support C# record types?
So that's a great question. And the answer is that in our next wave, so right now EF Core specifically supports .NET Standard 2.1 with the next release. So all of the features that are supported by that are going to be what you're able to use. Looking at the next release, the EF Core 6, not to be confused with EF6, which that's a whole different story. But that's one of the things our team looks at, things like nullable reference types, things like the new record types, how can we take advantage of the new feature set? So it's something that we want to take advantage of. I have to check with the team to see what the status is, but I'm pretty sure with .NET Standard 2.1, you're not going to have record types in those projects, but I could be wrong. I'm by no means the expert on that.
Okay, cool. So Mahesh has asked, and Mahesh is the guy who started C# Corner.
Okay.
And a good friend of mine. He lives in Philadelphia. What do you like or dislike working at Microsoft compared to your previous companies?
That is a great, great question. And how can I phrase it? So I've worked on the full spectrum of company. I've ran my own business and did that for several years. So it was a company of one, pretty much. My wife joined for a short while as
That's
well
when you were
CEO.
That.
Yes.
Yeah, I checked out your LinkedIn this morning. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Anyone who starts their own company, you've got to create that title. But I've also been a practice lead for a medium-sized company, a director. I was with a company that is a major company, hundreds of thousands of employees. So I'm just putting that caveat that I've had the experience across the perspective. And working at Microsoft is, to me, the best of all worlds. The culture has evolved, so I have the flexibility to follow my work style and the way I like to coordinate my schedule and the way I like to interact. That's obviously been strained and challenged with the current situation. But as a company, I'll give you an example. So it has a warm and welcoming feel. The team feels like a small startup, right? We're in this together as the Entity Framework core team or as the .NET for Spark team, but we have the support of this large corporation that I believe truly has our best interests at heart. And I had to go into campus for the first time. So it's ironic, when I switched roles from my cloud advocate role, which was a role that was completely remote. I did a ton of travel around the world for that role. I switched to this PM role, which is traditionally one where we'd be in the office more often because we're working with different teams and want to meet with them and be able to drive priorities and schedule and sprint plan, et cetera. And so I was accepted for this new role and was totally thinking about how I would shift to be in the office a little more often. I wasn't planning to be permanently in the office. And then the pandemic happened. Yeah. And the day that I started my new role was the day that Microsoft shut down their campus. So I've been in this role since February or March, and have not been on campus since I started. I had an issue with my laptop, and so I had to bring it in yesterday, and that was my first time on campus. And it seems like such a small thing, but I think this, to me, exemplifies the culture at Microsoft. In the time that I was gone, they fitted all of the doors that have badge entry with touchless entry. Wow. So I scan my badge, I wave, and the door opens. And they've always had some automation for these doors because of accessibility. So you can, used to be able to punch it. Well, now there's a touch-free, so that I don't have to worry about, disinfecting every time I pass through a door. Seems like a small thing, but it's an example of a small touch that helps employees feel more safe and helps promote better health and the way, we're dealing with the pandemic. That was probably a decent investment for the company, but they were willing to put that out there to make the campus a better place during these trying times. And that's really my impression of working there. I get a ton of support. I didn't have to transform into a corporate automaton robot, right? I still got to maintain my identity. I still have a close connection with my team. It feels like a small, close-knit group, but we have the support of this large company behind us. So it's pretty exciting, and it's I make no reservations about saying that if they'll have me, this is a place I'd like to stay for quite some time. So,
well, there you go, Microsoft. Now you know, right?
Yeah, and I'm rocking the classic Microsoft logo too. From
I know,
80s,
I've been noticing your shirt. It's cool. Yeah, when the little that I even go out now, and pretty much is only to like my doctor's office or something like that, and I had to deal with elevators and parking garages, and I'm going, oh man, all this needs to be touchless. It should have been touchless before the pandemic. It needs to be touchless from now on. And that, for me at least, one of the things that I hope this pandemic changes is things like that, because we should have done that a long time ago, right?
Right.
If only for the flu, but this really kind of, made people go into it. So I think we have another question. Can we have a single Blazor app works as a web application and Windows application, or probably standalone app on Linux, Windows?
Depending on your definition of application, the answer is yes. You can have a set of classes and libraries and even visual components. So the Razor components that render the UI, you can have that set common. You still need a different host. Right. The host for the web is going to be different than the host for an Electron desktop app, but you certainly can. It's an area I have not personally explored, is building Electron style apps, or it's not even Electron anymore. There's a lightweight web host that Steven Sanderson released that will host Blazor standalone. And I think the most compelling story, honestly, for Blazor, if you want it installed on a desktop, as long as you don't have to actually do a lot with the file system, is as a progressive web app.
Yeah.
So as a progressive web app, it can be a standalone install. You get access to the web APIs like mic, camera phone. I mean, the tool that we're using for this live stream is amazing because there's no plugins. The web standards have evolved to handle streaming and audio in a really good fashion. So the answer is yes. You can have, I would say, 98% of your logic shared across those apps, and that 2% would be the host. That, here's my host for desktop, here's my host for web. It should be pretty transparent between Linux and Mac and Windows flavors, because it is truly cross-platform.
Yeah, that's the promise, right? I haven't done those on those different kind of platforms, but yeah, that's the promise, right? Is that have one app that will pretty much run everywhere,
right,
and be client side everywhere. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I love Silverlight and threw so much energy into Silverlight, because there was a dream that it would be the platform to run .NET Anywhere. And we don't have to get into why that didn't work out at the time, but I believe that .NET Core is really the fulfillment of that dream. In fact, one of the first .NET Core presentations I gave over in Switzerland was a presentation where I took a library for compression that was written back in early, I want to say like 2004. So it had no idea about running on Linux or .NET Core or any of this. And I took the library, recompiled it to .NET Core, and then logged into a Linux machine and compiled an application, just to show that it really works cross-platform, and the API surface area is large enough that you can take these applications and sometimes move them as is. It's just a recompiling to a new target, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's true. For me at least, with .NET Core, starting with .NET 3, Core 3 is really where things really started to take off, I think.
Yes,
because you guys did so much work to get all those APIs into that version, and that's when, for me, .NET Core really became useful, and I use it pretty much 100% now.
Well, I had a lot of fun with the .NET Core 3 release. I had a short-lived product project, I should say, that I worked on called Sterling DB. It was an object-oriented database, and the idea was to make it really easy to cache things in Silverlight. So it would use Silverlight's local storage, and then when Windows Phone came out, it was using Silverlight 2, so I extended it to use phone storage. And a few pretty flagship applications used it to do things like state management, etc. And that database, I was pinged by Tim Hewer, so he was at the time, I believe, on the Silverlight team on the XAML experience side of that. But I was pinged by him in 2011 when the precursor to .NET Core was just being talked about, and he said something to the effect of, "When are we going to see Sterling DB ported to .NET Core?" And I took a look at it at the time, and there just weren't enough APIs for me to even tackle it. With .NET Core 3, it was a 2-hour exercise, and I had it ported. So I responded to his tweet from 2011, like 7 or 8 years later, and said, "How about now?" and pointed to the new repo with Sterling as a .NET Core project. So that was fun.
I think I did hear about Sterling back in Silverlight days. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I don't think I ever looked into it, but I remember the name. So
that was one of those projects that I had this block of code that was if, then, else, switch, and probably, I don't know, it was hundreds of lines. And I was driving my car. I don't know where to or from, but I was thinking about what I was doing, and I realized that there was something in common about most of those decision points, and that I should be able to refactor the code to do something a little more elegant and a little less complex. And I came back and collapsed those 200 lines down to about 20 or 30 lines of code. And it not only worked and passed my tests, but features that I hadn't yet implemented, because it was a more generic implementation of that algorithm, it was able to handle multiple features I had on my backlog that I was going to kind of brute force into the tool. But that was a epiphany moment for me, like one of those, code isn't about complexity. The more simple you can make your code, the more stable, scalable, more scenarios it can address, etc. So it was really eye-opening to see how that simplification could not only make it easier to read and understand, but also handled so many more use cases.
Yeah, and that's, that you remind me, because this week so next month, for the first time in like 3 years, I'm giving my coding standards talk, which is one of my books, is .NET Coding Standards. And so I was working on the talk, and I have 2 slides, that I call, keep it simple, stupid, KISS. I have the little picture of the band KISS on it, right? And that's what I always strive for, and I try to keep things as simple as possible. And for me, at least being as more of a lead architect level, one of my driving factors to keep it simple is not only because it's easier to read in the future and things like that, but I don't want to maintain it, right? So I want to give it to junior people to maintain it. I don't want to hold their hand, right? So, sometimes I actually do trade-offs to make sure that even a junior person could understand my code, either 6 months or 5 years from now, right? And that's always something I've always tried to strive for. So we have probably just one more question for Jeremy. Is Blazor production ready? Should I use it for production? Just afraid because I see very less community standard for it so far.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, Blazor is production ready. The answer to the question, should I use it for production, really depends on your use case and how you're implementing it. But there are customers live and happy at scale with Blazor in production. It's probably important to talk about Blazor WebAssembly versus Blazor Server. Mm-hmm. So Blazor WebAssembly is ready as well, but there's caveats that come with it. A very common question I get is using Entity Framework Core to connect to SQL Server from Blazor WebAssembly. And the answer to that is Entity Framework Core as a .NET standard library will run fine in Blazor WebAssembly. It'll run in your browser. The problem is when it goes to connect to SQL Server, SQL Server uses ports and protocols that aren't supported by the browser's sandbox. And so you just have to keep that in mind with your strategy of what you're going to use is, are you in the context of the client or the server? And I actually resisted Blazor in the beginning. I said, do we really need another framework? Started using it and was just blown away by how easy it was to build an app and pull in existing libraries. Then when Blazor Server came out, I also resisted that. Okay, well, why do we have this different flavor? But building Blazor Server apps is just so easy and straightforward that, I mean, I think both of them have a place depending on your needs. So as long as you're strategic about why you're using it, what you're using it for, it's great. And, you know, file new using your C# or F# skills is a great use case, but there's so much opportunity to take existing code that might be desktop code that you want to move to the web and be able to port that forward.
Yeah. I think of, you know, especially on the stuff where I'm working, I think a lot about, because we're dealing with this right now, I think a lot about security, you know, to our APIs and things like that. And, you know, and one of the struggles we had, you know, dealing with more of a JavaScript framework is that security problems, you know, and so, you know, the way I'm looking at Blazor right now is that if you don't actually need offline capabilities, I would probably stick with the server model. You know, and especially because of the security. You know, I would only go down the client, the client mode, you know, if you really need that, you know, because that's going to be some challenges for you to figure out the security and access to the database. And see, I never thought that I would never think about connecting to a database from a web browser. You know, that's just scary to me. You know, I know, go through an API where it's more secure and can go through a gateway and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Well, I think there's this perception that it's automatically faster because there's less steps in the middle. That may not be true to the effect of, is it going to be faster? Yes. Is it faster significantly enough that it's going to impact the user experience? That you'd have to look at, because if I have a server on an Azure backplane that's, you know, the same service that's standing up everything else, then those calls can happen pretty quickly. And I wouldn't say if this calls 50 milliseconds and this one's 52, those 2 milliseconds are probably worth the trade-off to simplify keeping it on the server. So,
yeah. So I think we're getting all these questions at the very end now. So, I'm really sorry we're going to have to cut it off, you guys. And, you know, please feel free to email me your questions, and maybe I can get Jeremy to write a blog or something about them. And but before you go, I want to thank you very much for being my first guest that I haven't been my friend for a long time. And I hope we can stay friends now, or at least virtual friends. And so I'd like to, you know, to end every interview with something you like to do for fun that's not, you know, software engineering. You've talked about hiking. Is there anything else you like to do?
Well, hiking is definitely the big thing. I hike all over. I've done, you know, overnight hikes, multi-day hikes. When I was in Georgia, it was the Appalachian Trail. Here it's the Cascades. I don't know if this is too techie or not, but I've got my Quest virtual reality device. And that is incredible, especially I use it for fitness too. I mean, I have a different fitness regimen, but for cardio days, there's boxing and Beat Saber, which is swinging things around. And so it's it's an amazing way to have fun playing games that actually require you to move and burn calories.
Yeah. Well, that's really important, like now, right?
Sure.
When everybody's kind of shut in and can't go anywhere, and you know, exercise, especially in the country where you live, is probably a challenge. You know, not only because of COVID, but now it's getting rainy and cold up there.
Right. And that's what I told my wife the other day. I said, this time of year is the time where I always struggle with exercise because it's dark, the days get shorter, it's cold, it's rainy. So having options that I can do indoor and quite frankly, that are flexible. The Quest is portable, so if I do travel, I can bring it with me and still take advantage of it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And, we've gotten so many questions that, I think I'm going to have you back next year, maybe when we, after .NET 5 is released, and get some more of these questions answered, if you have time, of course.
Sounds great. I'd love to make the time. Absolutely.
And I want to give you the invite that if you're ever in San Diego, let's go hang out and go to the beach. I live about a mile from the beach. And so, if you ever make it down this way, let's hang out.
I will take you up on that. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jeremy. And I hope you have a good rest of the weekend. And thanks for all the info that you shared with us today.
Thank you. You have a great weekend as well. Take care.
Thanks. Wow. That was a really awesome interview. I was nervous about it, but I guess I shouldn't have been. Well, maybe I should be nervous more often. But anyway. Can you put my slides back up? We got a couple more slides. There you go. He's getting used to me now. Again, I've tried to make these questions really easy for you guys. I want to give away a $50 Amazon gift card. I wish I could get one of these, but so here's the question. I tried to make it easy. I struggled with this question this morning going, what can I do that's computer related? You guys might know, maybe, I don't know. But you younger developers out there, I'm not sure if you'll get this, but let's see, okay? So first person to answer this question gets the $50 Amazon gift card. Ready? What is this? Anybody know? That's a device. That's it. I'll give you a hint. It's a computer device. What is it? Anybody know? I'll give you a few more seconds. Mouse. Yes. Jill, you won. That is the very first prototype for a computer mouse. I recommend go looking at the pictures of the prototype. It's really interesting how they built it. As you can see, it's made out of wood. But that's, you should see the underside of this thing. It's pretty crazy. So go check it out. All right. I'm glad somebody won. So, and of course, every show for the foreseeable future, everybody will get a free copy of CodeRush from DevExpress. Again, CodeRush is the only refactoring tool I've ever used in Visual Studio. I love it. I swear by it. And you can get your own free copy of it by going to devexpress.com/dotNetDave. All right, there you go. So thanks for watching. I'm really, really happy. And Jeremy was awesome. And we have another awesome person on that I've been in contact with for a while now. He's Mark Brown. He's the principal PM manager at Microsoft. And he's in the Cosmos DB camp. So if you have any questions about Cosmos DB, I have a lot. Please tune in next week and get your questions answered. I have a lot. So tweet your questions to me. And this is going to be a really fun show. Again, please be safe with the COVID. Please listen to your medical professionals. Unfortunately, America has hit a record high with cases like yesterday throughout the whole time of this. So I'm very worried about here. I checked India this morning. It looks like your numbers are going down a little bit, but please be safe out there because I want to see you back next week, and I want to see you back the next time I'm in India. Speaking at a conference or anywhere in the world speaking at a conference. Oh, that's it. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week.